thank Lou Frey for his leadership and also for helping to put together the Lou Frey Institute of Politics and Government, which I think will be a tremendous addition to the University of Central Florida. I have a great love for politics and government, and this will be an incredible opportunity for young people and others in the community to participate in learning more about our government, and certainly this forum is a great inaugural event. I also want to thank John Hitt for his incredible leadership. I've watched John grow and this university grow. Just incredible asset, wonderful institution. I'm pleased to at least represent peripherally. My district now stretches all the way up to the city limits of Jacksonville, but this great university. So thank you, John. And pleased to, again to be here today with you to discuss probably one of the most important issues of our time, and that's the issue of Homeland Security and how we balance that, particularly in a free and open society such as we're all a part of. I think that the real key to the question before us, and the question is Homeland Security versus police state, is a question of balance. A long time ago, the question was raised by the Founding Fathers about giving up liberty in the name of security, and when you do that, you end up with neither. So we have to always be cognizant of reaching a balance under our free and open constitutional system, respecting rights, respecting civil liberties, all guaranteed, again, under the framework of the Constitution. I think that given the nature of the problem we face, that the President of the United States, George W. Bush, has really taken on, and I've never seen anyone so focused. I flew down with him a few weeks ago when he came to Mayport. I've met with him in the White House on a number of occasions since September 11th, and I've never seen anyone in a leadership position so focused on really what we have to do in this to be successful, and that's to go after terrorists, wipe out terrorism worldwide and, of course, domestically. The rest is the most effective approach is what the President has chosen, and that's to go after terrorists. The most difficult approach to obtaining Homeland Security is really trying to set up systems that can be penetrable, and also trying to cover all of our homeland bases where we're at risk. It's almost an impossible task, folks. I can tell you from one perspective, and we all have our perspectives. Let me just tell you where I come from, and everybody in this audience and my colleagues are all products of the experience of September 11th. September 11th, that morning, I was in the Pentagon discussing national security issues at a breakfast meeting with Donald Rumsfeld, the Secretary of Defense, with Paul Wolfowitz. I think you saw him on the news this weekend, the Deputy Secretary, the Secretary of the Army, and several others at a breakfast meeting. And I left just moments before the plane hit the Pentagon. When the plane hit the Pentagon, one of our former staffers, Barbara Olson from Government Reform, was on that plane. In the Pentagon was Terry Lynch, someone who I served with as a staffer in the United States Senate. They, of course, were killed, and others in the Pentagon that I knew. 7 weeks before September 11th, I conducted a hearing in the World Trade Center on the question of aviation congestion in New York City. And those who hosted the World Trade Center, including Neil Levin, the director of the airport, the Port Authority for New York, also hosted me at a luncheon in Windows in the World after the hearing and my weekend visit there. Everyone who helped me that day was killed. Neil was in the restaurant of the World Trade center, and almost everyone who assisted me was obliterated on the morning of September 11th. So my view is impacted greatly by the events of that day. My responsibility before September 11th was, as chair of our aviation subcommittee, was to try to make planes more efficient, run on time, modernize our air traffic control system. Every day since September 11th, my goal has been to make certain that we have security and homeland security and international security in our aviation system. Some of the challenges that I face are trying to deal with real threats. We hastily put together the Transportation Security Administration, which I helped father. I joke sometimes the little bastard gets a bit out of control, but did put that concept together to protect us on all of our transportation fronts, not just planes, but also ports, highways, pipelines, and others. It's a very difficult challenge. Again, creating systems to deal with the myriad possibilities of terrorist threats. Just give you two of the challenges we face right now. In a few more hours, I'll go through the airport and walk through a metal detector. A metal detector to get on a plane that does not detect explosive devices. Right now I face the challenge of someone strapping explosives the size of a bar of soap around them without a metal fuse, such as Richard Reed did on his American Airlines flight from Paris. And walking through one of those undetected and getting on a plane. The problem I face there is the reluctance of people to give up their civil liberties to walk through a device that would detect explosives but also reveal their personal profile in the most minute detail. Another challenge I face is the CAPS, computer-assisted profiling system, and profiling systems in general. We don't want anyone discriminated against on the basis of race, religious, ethnic background, or any other single identity factor, but we do need a system that goes after bad guys and leaves good people free in our society. Those are some of the challenges we face. The answer, I think, again goes back to what the President has determined as a top priority, and that's to go after bad guys, whether they're in Iraq, whether they're in Afghanistan, or wherever they're harbored. That may be the only way we can deal with this, because building systems is not only costly, sometimes it's ineffective, and sometimes it does create a police state, which we do want to avoid. So again, we have to ask ourselves the question, are we willing to give up liberty in the name of security and end up with neither? Again, I thank Lou for the opportunity to participate and look forward to, I think we're going to have some questions.
We are going to have time for questions at the end, and I'm sure they'll be glad to do it. And next in line of seniority is Congressman Ric Keller. He's been a member of the Crime and Homeland Security Committee, and Rick and I had the privilege of practicing law some time ago together. So, Rick, all yours.
Thank you very much, Lou. Let me just go ahead and begin with some breaking news. I have just learned that 2 of the 3 Dixie Chicks have just surrendered. So that's a positive development. I want to thank Lou Frey for pulling together so many people today. I want to thank UCF for hosting this event. I want to thank especially the UCF students for getting up this early to come to this. As somebody in their 30s, I'm not that far removed from you, and I don't recall ever passing my snooze alarm that many times to get up early to hear a bunch of politicians, so I really appreciate you all coming out today. I want to talk about just three things this morning. First, I want to talk about improving communication between the various government agencies when it comes to Homeland Security. Second, I want to talk about getting money for our first responders, which are police officers and firefighters. And third, I'm going to talk about going on the offense to track down terrorists, which is the best way to have a secure homeland. So to begin with, improving communication so that the left hand of the government knows what the right hand is doing. Rather than give you a bunch of legal or political stuff, let me just tell you a real-life story to give you an idea of what I'm talking about. There were two terrorists named al-Midhar and al-Hamzi, which the CIA knew about. One of them, we had a film of them hanging out with Osama bin Laden. We knew about these people, the CIA did, about 19 months before September 11th. They had some concerns about them, had been monitoring them. They waited about a year and a half to share their concerns with the INS to make sure they didn't come into the country and with the FBI. But it was too late at that point because these two terrorists were already in this country. In fact, they were here living openly. They had driver's licenses. They had their names in the phone book. And we couldn't quite figure out where they were because we didn't know till the last minute. On the morning of September 11th, these two men walked right up to the ticket agent at Dulles Airport, just outside of Washington, D.C., used their real names, real IDs, real driver's license. The lady at the ticket agent said, "Welcome aboard." And a few minutes later, that plane slammed into the Pentagon and killed 190 people. We found out where they were. We had a problem with the CIA, the left hand, not communicating with the right hand, the FBI and INS. So we've had to do some things to improve that. One of the things we did was I co-sponsored some legislation creating a cabinet-level Department of Homeland Security at President Bush's request, so we can have joint assessments of threat information by these agencies. We also passed something that I wrote called the Keller Amendments, says we're going to do a computer check for terrorists before they get on an airplane. So we cross-check the manifest of the passenger list against the FBI watch list, which usually has about 250, 300 people, which would have saved 190 lives there. But that's now the law. Are they doing better? They absolutely are doing better. One example would be the very first day of the war. You may have heard that the director of CIA, George Tenet, had some information, and he casually had a lunch with Don Rumsfeld, shared that information with him, and that is we had a pretty good idea of where Saddam Hussein and some of his high-ranking lieutenants would be. And so acting with the speed, really, of a cougar almost, our government got together, exchanged information, met with the White House, and on a plane, the pilot was able to make the changes, and they with their precision-guided smart bombs, blew that building to smithereens, all within a very short period of time because we have this enhanced communication process. So I'm optimistic that things are running a lot smoother now. The left hand of the government is communicating with the right hand of the government. The second challenge we have is getting money for the first responders, who are our firefighters and police officers. After all, even though the federal government may say, well, there's an orange alert or there's a red alert and we need to beef up security, it's the local sheriffs and police officers who go to protect the water plants and the other sites. It's the firefighters who are the ones who rush into the buildings to save people when there's a structural collapse. And so we've done a couple things in that regard. On the federal level, we passed a bill earlier this year called the Omnibus Appropriation Bill that provided $3.5 billion for first responders. Last week, we passed a supplemental bill that provided an additional $4 billion for these first responders. That money went down to the state of Florida, as it does other states. So Governor Bush got $71 million to pass out last year, and this year he will have $95 million. And so our local police agencies and firefighters can then apply directly to Tallahassee to get these grants. So far, we've had some success. For example, Orange County Fire Department just got $1.7 million in grants, and I certainly am supportive of their efforts to have an urban search and rescue team. So if we have a structural collapse, a building collapse, they can have sort of like the special forces of firefighters and engineers go in there to rescue people. The third thing I want to talk about is the importance of going on the offense to protect our country. Ultimately, if we have the best and well-funded first responders, we have a wonderfully communicating government, we still can't be all places at all times. And we learned that from September 11th. We have the world's greatest military. We have a great FBI. But we couldn't be at all places at all times. And so the only way really to have a great defense is to go on offense. And that means physically tracking down the terrorists, taking out the terrorist state leaders, and third, going after domestic terrorists as well. So let's start with the terrorist groups, and the number one we're dealing with right now is Al-Qaeda. There's a most wanted of Al-Qaeda of 21 members. We have already captured or killed 13 of the 21 members of Al-Qaeda. including the mastermind, Mohammed, of September 11th. As you know, we are still going after Osama bin Laden, and ultimately we will get him. But it is so challenging, and some of you may be frustrated. Why haven't we got bin Laden? And I share your frustration, but I can tell you as someone who's briefed regularly on these things, this is the challenge we face. We'll get a piece of information, and at the middle of the night, 19-year-old kids are woken up by their sergeant and saying, hey, we're going to have to scale this mountain. It's midnight. It's 15 degrees. The mountain is 3,500 feet, and as we climb this mountain, we're going to go in each and every cave looking for terrorists and leadership targets, knowing full well that behind each cave could be someone with a machine gun ready to blow you apart. So it's a very challenging task, and they're doing the very best they can. All we can do as Congress is make sure that they fully have our support so they have the most high-tech equipment and resources to get their job done. Second, terrorist state supporters like Saddam Hussein. Saddam has press conferences to announce that he's funding, for example, the suicide bombings that are going on in Israel right now. He proudly gives out checks of $25,000 to family members. He thinks that's a good thing. He doesn't hide it. It's not a secret. He also is engaged in joint training with biological and chemical weapons of mass destruction with al-Qaeda. Those of you who happened to see Colin Powell's presentation to the UN learned a little more about that. So we are going after Saddam Hussein. As we speak today, we don't know with mathematical certainty whether he's even alive or dead. And we do know there's going to be a regime change sooner rather than later. The third thing we're doing to go on the offense is going after domestic terrorists. And I co-sponsored legislation called the Patriot Act, which gives the FBI more tools to go after terrorists. One of the topics, are we going too far in giving up civil liberties in exchange for going after terrorists more aggressively, is the question. All I can tell you is that committee in which I serve, the Judiciary Committee, is by far the most polarized, partisan committee in Congress. We have the most liberal Democrats. We have the most conservative Republicans. And that committee voted unanimously, 40-0, in favor of the Patriot Act. So I think we got the ball in the strike zone there. Some people hear about different invasions of privacy and giving up too many civil liberties, and often it's based on misinformation. For example, the most common complaint is about roving wiretap authority, and I've heard college students say, well, I don't want them looking on my computer or wiretapping my phone, or we're going too far. Well, they don't do that, and they can't do that. Before you wiretap someone, you have to go before a judge and get a court order showing that you have probable cause. What the roving wiretap authority means, and you still have to do that, is if we had a terrorist and we knew that this guy was about to commit terrorist acts and we had a court order and he was using a certain cell phone, if he switched to a different cell phone, we no longer had that court order. Or if he switched to a regular phone, or if he used his computer. The roving wiretap says once you get a court order and you show there's probable cause, the wiretap authority transfers. If he leaves Orange County and goes to Seminole County, we can still monitor him. If he uses one cell phone instead of another cell phone, we still monitor him. That's all it means. So we've got a good balance between civil liberties and giving the FBI the tools they need. I don't think that we've gone too far in instances where there was a little bit of overreaching, like Attorney General Ashcroft wanted something called the TIPS program, where termite inspectors would then be kind of secret agents for the federal government and report back to them. We killed that and said no funding for that. So there has been a little attempt at overreaching, but because we have a pretty balanced Congress, even though it's Republican control, we got a lot of Democrats there. We try to do what's right irrespective of who's in charge, and just try to balance the civil liberties versus giving FBI tools they need to go after terrorists. I'm very optimistic about how things are going. Let me just say that in closing. I think that whatever it costs, whatever it takes, we're going to win the 21st war, first war of the 21st century. And I think President Bush is doing a good job, and I'm proud to be there supporting him. Thank you all very much.
And our next speaker is obviously someone who's been in politics for a while, the leader of the House of Representatives in the state, and now member of Congress and a member of the Crime and Homeland Security Committee also. Tom Feeney, please welcome him.
Well, I want to thank Lou and the Institute. What a critical topic as we reassess where America's history and our future in light of all sorts of new challenges. I want to thank University of Central Florida, my good friend President Hitt and his team, and we're grateful for all you do, including helping the Frey Institute, which is terrific. And it's especially great to be here with Congressman Mica, who really is a leader on transportation, including transportation issues, and Ric Keller, who precedes me on the Judiciary Committee and has really been battling terrorism in this whole new world we live in for 2 years, and he's been a great mentor on that committee to check with. The topic is sort of a fascinating one, Homeland Security versus a police state. And the truth of the matter is, if you look constitutionally, and I hope you'll challenge all of the lawyers from both sides and the theoreticians today, the truth of the matter is that America's history has been a balancing act between privacy and freedom on the one hand and security on another. Technology, among other things, makes the challenge of doing this balance a new and fascinating experience all the time, especially in light of modern changes. I will tell you that remember that in the Civil War, Lincoln actually put in jail a newspaper editor. Now, the First Amendment is pretty clear that we're a country that believes deeply not just in free speech, but in freedom of the press. When a prominent New York newspaper editor repeatedly editorialized against the draft, Lincoln actually suspended civil rights. Remember, the Civil War was to fight for civil rights, if you were from the Union perspective. With respect to this newspaper editor, threw him in jail so that he could continue to effectively institute the draft and prosecute the war. Of course, the internment of Japanese Americans in World War II. The government at the time under President Roosevelt actually argued it was for their safety, but they didn't have much of a choice to decide whether it was for their safety or not. The point I want to make is that the balance between the security and liberty, on the other hand, is something that is ever-changing. If you look at our Fourth and Fifth Amendment to the Constitution, for example, it talks about unreasonable searches and seizures are prohibited. Well, what is reasonable as a search of your body or your automobile or your computer changes based on the threat to domestic security. So this is going to be an issue that the courts are going to be grappling with. I happen to, consider myself a civil libertarian, and I know that the American Civil Liberties Union will be addressing you on these issues this afternoon, but the truth of the matter is that they're going to have to answer some not just theoretical questions, but some very practical questions. What if? Even if you're the biggest libertarian out there, I think most of us would acknowledge that the federal government ought to have at least two responsibilities. I know libertarians that say we ought to get out of the education business, Dr. Hitt. I know them that think we ought to have no welfare, that that's all should be left to charity. But even libertarians, to the most extreme degree about the role of government, which would basically argue that we ought to be nothing but a night watchman state. Everybody ought to be free to pursue their own ends and get government out of my pocketbook and my gun case and everything else. But even libertarians would say that a federal government in America has at least two responsibilities: secure the border and protect the homeland. I mean, we can all agree at a minimum and that is an obligation. For about 220 years of our history, we had the two best defense fortresses that anybody could ever conceive of for a great nation. It was called the Atlantic Ocean and the Pacific Ocean. And we were very much immune from the typical threat of hostilities because of those two great defense systems. That's no longer true. As Secretary Colin Powell reminds us, there was about a 200-year debate in America whether we ought to be internationalists, get involved everywhere and anywhere we could in terms of trade and defense agreements, et cetera, liberate countries that didn't have democracy or freedom. And then there was another side, Taft, who was a great Republican leader for many years, and some Democrats, and certainly Pat Buchanan, for example, have argued for almost an isolationist point of view. It's none of America's business what's happening in Asia and Europe. Withdraw our troops, withdraw our money. We don't need free trade agreements. We need to ignore people whenever we can and mind our own business. We are, as Secretary Powell says, all reluctant internationalists nowadays. You don't have a choice. Imagine had Hitler had the sort of chemical, biological capabilities, let alone the nuclear capabilities that are now available out there increasingly to a world. Imagine that he had had the intercontinental ballistic missiles that could have delivered those capabilities. Imagine if Stalin had had those. Now, eventually the Soviet Union did get some of those weapons, but imagine if Mao, or let alone some of these other terrorists and rogue nation states, including North Korea today, imagine if they have deliverable capabilities. It's not just nation states. I mean, if you think about it, we were very fortunate as a country to have Russia as an enemy because they were a very rational actor. When President Carter, running for election, said, boy, I hope they don't go into Afghanistan, but by the way, if they do, there won't be any military response, The Russians said, thank you very much. They took him up on his offer, and they went into Afghanistan. On the other hand, as long as we engaged in this a policy of what was called mutual assured destruction. I don't know if Dr. Jewett's out there and how much he does internationally. Yeah, Aubrey, great to see you. Mutual assured destruction was basically the premise on an international level that if I put a gun to your head and you put a gun to my head, and we both knew that in a response to you pulling the trigger, I would have time to pull mine, that neither one of us would. And actually, every major missile treaty the United States ever negotiated with the Russians was not to stop offensive capabilities. We wanted to continue giving each side bigger guns. It was to make sure nobody had defensive capability. The theory being that if one side could defend themselves or reasonably well defend themselves, they may have an interest in attacking the other side. You cannot engage in a rational, mutual assured destruction policy if your enemy is Saddam Hussein or Osama bin Laden or Kim Jong-il. The truth of the matter is that you have to do very different strategic thinking, which is why missile defense is very important on a national level, for example. I will tell you that with respect to the police-state issue, and as somebody who is a civil libertarian, it is scary to me that we could become an Orwellian state. I remember the first time I visited Germany, 1989, my wife and my mom and dad went over there, and the first thing that hits you is, and this is 1989, some of you, the students were probably still in grade school at the time. You get off the plane and there are soldiers walking around with Uzi submachine guns. It was a surreal experience for somebody who had traveled in America. We didn't see machine guns on the street very often in those days. If you think about where the country of Israel is now, that on a weekly basis they have to deal with terrorist bombs in their buses, in their discotheques, in their cafes, the sad fact of the matter is that if we're not careful, America may be at that point very quickly, where it is an everyday experience. And you're going to see, police officers with Uzis walking around everywhere, including our schools, including our churches and our libraries, which is scary to me. But there is the Orwellian capabilities of government now that are also scary in very many respects. I mean, the data that can be combed from your computer system. And it seems to me that there is a very different set of expectations between the average person who's 5 or 10 years older than I am and the average person who's 5 or 10 or 15 years younger. It seems to me younger people are more comfortable with the fact that because they're more comfortable with computers and the internet, et cetera, that all sorts of data information is flowing out there and that people know about it, banks and credit companies, et cetera, government perhaps. It's scary, but I think that the younger generation tends to be a little bit more comfortable. Older folks like me and generations before me used to believe that a man's home was his castle. That was before the gender equality days. Now, but even after gender equality, a family's home was their castle. Nobody ought to be able to know what's going on. Very different set of privacy expectations. If you run through a red light in certain places in Florida today, we will get a picture of you. If you walk in downtown areas after dark, in Tampa, increasingly in here in Central Florida, there will be movie cameras of what you're up to. We have satellite capabilities that can zero in on your license plate tag and figure out where you are. When you use the E-Pass, as I do, basically the government can track, if they so desire, virtually every move of your automobile. So it's a very different day in terms of expectations. Now, the topic that we've been asked to talk about, and I think that Congressman Mica talked a lot about the key parts of transportation. I think Rick really set out the three things we have to deal with in terms of defense, in terms of international affairs, and ultimately being aggressive in the war on terror. I don't think we have any choices, and I think that my colleagues set out the issues in a big way. But I want to leave you thinking about a couple issues that are specific to Central Florida. We've got the busiest on many days and the second busiest on other days seaport in the entire planet, right here at Port Canaveral. We've done a lot at the federal level and the state level to beef up security. Remember that just 2 years ago, before September 11th, literally 5 Chinese immigrants floated up on a raft right at NASA's controlled Kennedy Space Center. Not exactly the most secure area if you think about people with a lot more capabilities and evil intent and what they potentially could do. NASA has beefed up dramatically in the 107 mission, which sadly had a disastrous result, not because of terror activity apparently, but in part because there was an Israeli astronaut on board, and in part because of the September 11 episode. We now believe that our shuttle is a highly desirable target for evildoers throughout the world. I think that clearly our theme parks, I mean, if what terrorists' ultimate goal is not necessarily to just wipe out 100 or 1,000 or 4,000 people in the case of the World Trade Center, the ultimate goal of terrorists is to change your way of life and to change our governmental response. And so I think civil libertarians and the ACLU will come say, don't let them win. Don't let them scare us. And I think President Bush makes that point. But by the same token, the only way that we can protect our way of life is to respond to the technological capabilities and the evildoers out there so that our folks feel secure in their daily lives, people feel secure to travel. And if you think about the ultimate goal of terrorists, meaning being to change the way we approach our daily life and our lives, I think an attack with nerve gas or chemical or biological weapons at an internationally renowned theme park or a theme park community is certainly something that we have to think very seriously about. And finally, I would say that the truth of the matter is that we have the best-known governor on the planet because of who his brother is, because his father was president of the United States. I think that we have to think about the fact that our probably capital, and I was as the congressmen were up on September 11th in Washington and responding to the crisis up there. I was in the Emergency Operations Center at the Department of Community Affairs with Governor Bush, and little things that you have to think about. We had a major bank in the state that was thinking of closing early that day, and if you think about the last time we had a run on banks in America was 1929. And I suggested strongly to the governor he get on the phone to the bank officials. It turns out that they kept their doors open all day. But these are things that we just never thought about before, because until September 11th, it was really none of local government's business or state government's business to protect people from international threats. We had the Atlantic and the Pacific. In the response to September 11th, and I'm going to close up here, we've known a couple things. Number one, we have to coordinate local, state, and federal activity. Number two, we have to communicate, as both John and Rick told you, between different agencies. So the redoing of a major part of the United States government under the auspices of the Department for Homeland Security is to make sure that people are talking to one another at the same level of government. It's a huge challenge. It's going to cost some money. There are going to be some rebalancing of our expectations about privacy and individual liberty based on the new threats. But ultimately, I'm like Rick and John. I'm very optimistic that this is going to be a long war. You cannot find every terrorist and every vial of nerve gas and VX and anthrax and smallpox and who knows what the next set of diseases, for example, may be. But I think American ingenuity and technology has always risen to the challenge. I think the American spirit and the American people and the American military have always defeated real evildoers on the globe. And I don't know exactly what the threats are going to pan out to be in the future, but I do know that I have confidence that America will conquer those threats. Thank you.